In your next tape, do let me know if you see Charles around town ever. I don't have the slightest emotional curiosity about him, but I'm beginning to get these legal letters from his hired thug Gilman that make me, honestly, worry for his sanity. How can you share a man's bed for 22 years, picking his socks up every morning and trying to make them match when they come out of the dryer, and then find him so full of sheer malice and hatred? And you must let me know how the August boat races went. I'll never forget the year Pearl came in second in the junior division. The Rhodes 19s, with all those brave, puffed-out sails, thick as snowflakes, flecking the horizon out by the far none, and the biggest, darkest, most terrifying thunderheads I've ever seen building up in the northeast, beyond the lighthouse on Ferry's Point. And my heart... End of tape. August 4th. Dear Mr. Gilman, I've been puzzling over your several letters for some days here in the desert. The ashram's spiritual routines make it difficult to focus upon the nasty worldliness that evidently still goes on. In my view, I removed myself from the accessible joint holdings of Dr. Worth and myself, merely my proper wife's share, rather less indeed, since most of our property could not be carried away or divided. I am confident that a divorce court, were we to come to it, would grant me no less and probably more. I would gladly consent to divorce proceedings whenever you can persuade your client to forego such hurtful and inappropriate terms as desertion, adultery, and theft, and to approach me not in a spirit of bitter adversary, but one of sober, saddened mutuality, as we lay to rest a partnership long shared, one to whose virtues and fatal defects we no doubt contributed equally. And I sadly marvel that my former, for he already is in my mind irrevocably, husband, has the preposterous temerity to claim damages to his mental health and professional reputation due to my desertion, a tactful withdrawal was how I felt it, and to sue for alienation of affections the utterly otherworldly man who passively allows his beautiful presence to shed divine light upon his disciples, and who was known to me while living with Charles only as an image on a poster and a voice on a tape. And furthermore, and most brazenly, to list as stolen property, flatware, a tea service, and candelabra which have been in a branch of my family since their initial purchase. Not to mention some precious old books that were the only luxuries my dear dead father allowed himself, and that since my earliest girlhood I have often seen tenderly held in his hands. I cannot conceive of any judge who, however corrupt and woman-hating, would not dismiss these charges with the contempt they deserve. Honestly, Mr. Gilman, can you? So why are you, presumably hitherto a reputable man, consenting to play a part in Charles's psychopathic farce? Do you have a wife, or as they say now with such cumbersome euphemism, relationship? Have you never had a daughter? Or perhaps sisters? Surely you have had a mother, and were not discovered under a cabbage leaf like a slug. Consider even the poor female office slave who takes your hesitant noises, grunted and mumbled, into the dictaphone and turns them into the correctly spelled and grammatical letters which I keep receiving in all their impeccable masculine effrontery. Think of the indispensable female presences in your life, and ask yourself if you can continue to execute the commands of this crazed and vindictive client, and to run, via registered mail, itself unutterably pompous, his demeaning errands. He at least has the excuse of wounded pride. He at least once shared my bed, and still imagines, albeit falsely, that his abuse has some charm for me. But you have no such excuses. Come off it, Mr. Gilman. Go back to evicting the poor and defending rapists, and leave good women alone. Sincerely, Sarah Price Worth. August 24th. Dearest Pearl, I'm sorry to have been so slow to answer your letter. The truth is, darling, it hurt your mother's feelings a teeny bit. Of course I'm delighted that you and Jan had such a lovely summer in Europe. It was brutally hot here, and people, even the ones that didn't get heat stroke, began to act very testy. Not Vic Schipta, the vile-tempered German I mentioned before. He actually left in July, and I've heard is trying to get a counseling job in Seattle or Portland or some other cool, misty place. But the women I work with, the Sannyasins call us the godmothers. Not entirely kindly, I think. Perhaps women together all day and night are too much of a good thing. That female attentiveness begins to work on the nerves. One begins almost to long for a man who doesn't notice anything. Your own father certainly didn't have that among his faults, that tireless, nervous susceptibility. I mean, bursting into tears or storms of rage over each imagined slight or deviation from utter devotion. In the nature of my expanded duties here, I've been spending more time with the Arhat himself, and one woman, called Durga, who still claims to be his chief executive assistant, though she does nothing these days but agitate and storm and sulk and consort with the security forces, young men full of guns, is jealous of me. And another, Alinga, my dear housemate, is jealous of him, our adored master. I used to think women were so prone to jealousy because the patriarchal society denied them any power except that which they could extract from interpersonal relationships. But now I wonder if it isn't more biological than that. The women here have power enough. All this is a prelude to speaking honestly with my lovely little priceless pearl. I am glad, as well as surprised, that you found Jan's parents so delightful. Their house in Amsterdam dating back to 1580 and on a lovely quiet canal, their country estate with its working windmill and squawking peacocks, their apartment in Paris, their 20-meter yacht kept at a Turkish harbor, their fluent English, French, German, and Italian. I still don't understand why Jan's father is entitled to call himself a count if they come from this long line of innkeepers and beer makers, but I'm glad you found this brewery itself so thrilling. Though, of course, everything is clean, dearest. Otherwise, their precious beer would taste of lint and cobwebs and cockroach feces. The whole dreary process has to do with bacteria, a rather hideous, microscopic kind of farming. Most of your life stretches gloriously before you, and of course part of it must be exposing your sweet and unspoiled self to all sorts of people, including these von Herzogs, vulgar and yeasty as they sound. But I am, frankly, offended at your report of their excessive curiosity as to my present situation, and more hurtful still, your own embarrassment in regard to it. Whatever can be embarrassing? Your mother is seeking truth, beauty, and freedom, and finding it. What is there to be ashamed of? Be ashamed, rather, of her previous 22 years of respectable bondage and socially sanctioned frivolity. Who are they, these brewers, living as they do off of human drunkenness and forced bacterial labor, to turn up their noses at a cult which is striving to offer the world a new model of human arrangements? With their alcohol, they are anesthetizing sick mankind. We are attempting a cure. These vain and vapid Herzog's opinion concerns me less than a pair of their pet microbes. What saddens me beyond description is that my own daughter, the female child of my female womb, loved as much as any mother ever loved a daughter, appears to share the doubts of these square-headed Dutch folk. You ask me if I intend to stay at the ashram till kingdom come, if I haven't already got out of it all I am going to get. You speak of my renewal here as an ego trip, when in fact the flight from ego is what I have undertaken. And you write the jeering words, group grope, when in truth the grope is all behind me, in that pathetic suburban squirming in the closets and backstairs of respectability. The relationships I enjoy in the ashram, those that wound as well as heal, all transpire in the bright sunlight of Amaya, of non-deceit. I regret even so much as hinting of my friendships here, since you seem to discuss them promptly with Jan, and thence they are relayed in the language of prurient gossip to your, I shudder to write it, possible in-laws. You say Jan is serious. Serious is one thing he impresses me as not, from all I have been able to discern between the lines of your cherished and pondered, though short and infrequent, letters. He is a floater, dear, a fleck of suds on his father's malodorous fortune. A generation ago, he would have been rioting and making plastic bombs and wearing filthy, floppy rags. 10 years ago, he would have been doing the disco scene and jetting to Bali with all the other children of inflation. In these more straitened times, he comes to Oxford to study economics and just happens to make the acquaintance of an innocent, golden American girl whom he of course wants to marry, and not just incidentally thereby to get himself his green card. They all love their green cards, these foreigners. Durga and Vikshipta have an incessant problem and keep getting these badgering letters from the Immigration Service and even our miraculous Arhat, who has brought so much wealth and profitable enterprise to the nation, became rather mysterious and irritable when I once asked him about his residency status. But I mustn't mention the Arhat, as that offends you. You write rather wistfully of your father's visit this summer. You say he spoke fondly of me, as if that amazed you. You say he seemed in a forgiving mood, as if there was much to forgive. You write that he keeps our old home up, mostly by not living in most of the rooms, and has no conspicuous girlfriend, as if that will gladden my heart, or shame me, or do something to me. It does nothing. Nothing but make me feel a quite unnecessary estrangement between you and me. You write of him as a lumbering, fuzzy old, bafflingly wounded teddy bear at the same time that he and this shyster Gilman he's hired are bombarding me with the most preposterous legal documents, all meant simply to terrify a defenseless woman who has for a lawyer that wimpy, if formerly superficially attractive Ducky Bradford. He is so preoccupied with coming out of the closet as a middle-aged gay and humiliating poor Gloria and then discovering that life out of the closet is no picnic either, that he can hardly lift a legal finger. You write of what a tender and attentive father yours was, when the sad truth is he hardly bothered to kiss you goodnight most nights, let alone read a bedtime story as you and he both seem to be fantasizing. Worse yet, even when you had a cold or mumps, that time your face looked like a gourd, or that very odd fever up to 104.5 degrees that had me so worried about possible permanent brain damage, your father, the big Boston doctor, couldn't be bothered to doctor his own daughter, but had me drag you over to the Beverly Hospital and sit there in the waiting room with the television turned up so loud and the air so thick with germs you refused to breathe and turned bright blue. Precious Pearl, make no mistake. I nursed you. I changed your diapers. I dried your tears. You sucked milk out of my breasts, took hold of life in my belly, not your father's. All he did was clumsily contribute his sperm. I had no climax when you were conceived. I rarely did in those virtually virginal days, and show up at your graduations. Now, of course, that you're a stunning woman and he's a well-dressed man in his 40s who hasn't let himself go entirely to pot, it's all very cute for the two of you to trot out to Queen's Arms or the King's Joint or whatever the most expensive restaurant in Oxford is and split a carafe of an amusing dry Beaujolais and discuss in tiddly, cozy fashion how far poor old mother has wandered off the deep end. But raising you was not an equal partnership, and I am hurt, dearest Pearl, by what seems to me not so much your divided loyalty, that perhaps is to be expected and is healthy, but what can only strike me as disloyalty. Be true to yourself, and you will be true to me. I did not raise my flaxen-haired darling to be her father's cat paw, or for that matter, some minor princess of malt. Do forgive me. How your mother does go on with her wiggles. Think of these letters as what I do now instead of embroidery. But isn't it better not to pretend I wasn't hurt by the really very delicately but unmistakably challenging tone of your letter? I've been under some stress here, too, aside from worrying about my priceless elf child. Pressures from the outside are producing shifting allegiances within. It turns out that Ma Propti, a rather stern, sad, mustachioed soul whom I formerly admired as a kind of Albert Schweitzer or Mother Teresa, has really been rather indiscriminate in her distribution of prescription drugs. Vikshipta left, it turns out, because he was convinced he was being poisoned. There are days, especially after the cafeteria has served one of those cruelly hot curries that disguise every other taste, when people complain of wooziness and cramps and we all go about in something of a daze. I've been blaming it on the heat, which, even though we're almost into September, has not let up. There is so much suspicion around, in fact, that I don't like to mail personal letters with the Umaroom mail. But I must get this on the way, and do hope it will still reach you at the Iffley Road address. If not, they can forward it back to Yale, which begins in less than 3 weeks. I will ignore your passing mention of Jan's wanting you to take the fall term off so you and he can go to Crete and the Greek islands in the familial yacht. I know taking time off from college isn't the end of the world like it used to be, but skipping out of your senior fall term for a Mediterranean jaunt with a Dutch playboy would be, how can I say this without giving offense? Unspeakable. Still love me? Here's some kisses. Mummy. September 2nd, 1986. Gentlemen, I am very interested in opening a credit deferrable charge account with the Arhat Book and Gift Shop of Samana Cay, Bahamas. My understanding is that a balance in excess of charges will accumulate 6% interest compounded monthly, while a debit of more than 30 days standing will be penalized at the rate of 12%, also compounded monthly. Though I am temporarily an executive assistant at Ashram Arhat here in Arizona, my account, I wish to emphasize, would be a personal one for my use only. I look forward to receiving whatever information you can send, along with relevant currency and investment regulations in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. With sincere thanks, Sarah P. Worth. September 6th. Dear Mother, just the briefest note to check in. They've given me more responsibilities here, and I'm up to my ears in legal and financial details. Of course, I'm horrified to hear that you have cashed in all your CDs, even paying the fines to do so, and have sold those blocks of Daddy's lovely old IBM and AT&T and put everything into the stock of this cosmetic company your Admiral friend has heard is going to be taken over by Revlon. His grandson's being an investment banker doesn't mean a thing. Or rather, it does mean, if this is real insider information, that you and the boy and old Granddaddy will all go to jail. If, on the other hand, it's not real insider information, then you're holding a big chunk of some stagnant company, Visage Inc. What kind of a name is that? From Arkansas that will pay peanuts. Not even that, peanut shells, for dividends and slowly sink into the swamp of what's left of Reaganomics. The CDs were safe, sure, and smart, as I told you before. You've obviously written me off as an advisor and probably even heir. But think of your own grandchild, Pretty Pearl, who adores you and who has let herself fall into the clutches of some loathsome Dutch pseudo-plutocrats because, no doubt, of financial insecurity. If she didn't have a grandmother who was squandering her eventual inheritance, she might have the self-respect and self-confidence to stick with her education and independent development. She's even threatening not to return to Yale this fall. Isn't that incredibly self-destructive? Do phone her and tell her so, instead of commiserating with her over what a rotter I am and what a St. Charles is. She didn't exactly quote you to that effect, but I can read between the lines. Your involvement with this alleged admiral I find, of course, alarming. He sounds like a typical male exploiter, hunting for a cook and a nurse to see him into his grave. Don't discuss money with this ancient mariner. Or if you do, ask about his money. Find out if he has enough of his own so that he isn't after yours. Do take your vitamins, especially A, to combat aging and brain cell loss. Niacin can be very effective in reversing delusional thinking. A lot of Alzheimer's, they think now, is caused by aluminum salts in the blood. Aluminum turns out to be in everything. Toothpaste, aspirin, water, and of course you cook with pots of it. I forgot. You don't cook anymore. You and the Admiral eat out. Champagne and oysters and chocolate cake every night. I told the Arhat what you were up to, and he laughed and said, "Women are the gods." He joins me in sending you Strivia Tereka. Love. Sarah. October 1st. Charles. Your barrage of Gilman-esque legalese has left me unimpressed. If you can arrange my arrest, go to it. Pearl can add to her distinctions that of her mother being put in jail by her father. Actually, you never hear of that, do you? Halves of a couple can murder and desert each other easily enough, but legally, I believe, we are somehow one, and therefore have oddly little recourse. Anyway, the courts are bored with couples. The whole world, for that matter, is bored with couples, and if a couple doesn't take an interest in itself, no one else will. All these lawyerly threats and bluff I take to be your stiff and clumsy way of expressing your continued interest in me. But I would never do as your wife again, having so wildly fallen. To my derelictions, I have recently added a lesbian romance, delicious and comforting, but rather, for my Yankee tastes, lacking in fiber. Women do tempt the pilgrim to rest, and that is why holy men have tended to hate them. Holy men, not the gods. Zeus, Christ, Buddha loved women, but not their philosopher followers. No? I see you, dear Charles, as something of a holy man, really, with your white lab coat and your hands chilly from their last scrubbing. So truly you must consider me lost to you. When I left you last spring and wrote that long, frightened letter on the plane, it was like a prank I was carrying out under your auspices, under your giant parasol, and I was like the id in a dying body that cannot admit it is dying. But now I can admit it. I was dying to you. Have you ever noticed in all the dead people you have seen how small they become? A dead face is no bigger than a dessert plate. I see you now clearly, reduced to your actual size. These legal pranks of yours are pathetic. Tell Gilman I will settle for half the value of the two houses as appraised for fair market value in today's skyrocketing New England real estate market. Half the New Hampshire land ditto, the stocks and bonds as I divided them, my Mercedes, I hope you rev the engine now and then, all the silver and furniture that came from my ancestors with their single, insistent initial, and all my legal expenses. The more or less modern furniture we acquired together I grandly waive. Your next victim can live with it and worry about the slipcovers and the loose legs. I think I'm offering a good deal. Most wronged wives get 100% of the primary residences, at least. And I was wronged, of course. Don't make me interrupt my lessons in non-involvement by coming east and collecting depositions from a bevy of fucked nurses and other helpless inmates of your hospital harem. Maybe we can work up a scandal for the Herald, or at least the New England Journal of Medicine. Midge suffered your affairs through with me for these last 10 years. I see her, really, as my human archivist. I told her everything back when I cared, through storms of tears. Gilman should contact Ducky Bradford when he and you are ready to talk sense. And do lay off little Pearl. Try to think like a father instead of a strategist in the war between the sexes. I ask your help in warding off what I think is her very demeaning involvement with this gross Dutch bunch. They are everything Americans left Europe to get away from. Materialist, class-obsessed, cruel in their smugness, and smug in their dullness. The boy, naturally, has an unearned sophistication that would dazzle our wide-eyed daughter. Flats in Paris and Venice. But once the tourism is over, the leaden weight of age-old sacrosanct male supremacy will descend. Europeans are always bragging how their pedigrees go back to cavemen, as if this entitles them to still think like cavemen. Behind that superficial savoir-faire, they are cynical, slobbering brutes, and nothing delights them so much as the destruction of a beautiful innocence like our daughters. It's not too early to think about having some fall fertilizer spread on the lawn. They say the acid rain makes it more important than ever. Lawncraft makes a 10-6-4 mixture called turf food that should go on with the spreader set at notch 5. Tell the boys to move briskly doing it. Last year they left burned patches wherever they turned the spreader around. You must get Mr. Kimball when he does the storm windows also to clean the gutters. Otherwise, all winter there are those dreadful orange stains down behind the drain pipes. Make sure he takes the windows out of the frames and Windexes both sides, instead of just the outside, which is easy to reach from a ladder. He hates doing it, and who can blame him, but it must be done. Remember those first years after we bought the house from old Mrs. Pynchon? So young and frightened that $56,000 might have been impossibly too much to pay. How we used to wash the windows together on a weekend. The warm, early fall wind blowing the sailboats along on the dark blue ocean with its white caps. And the whole world so new to us and clean, clean, clean. Love, S. Tape. Are you there? I guess it's working. Midge, you wouldn't believe the goings-on we've been having here. Maybe some of it has been getting into the Boston papers, but no doubt hideously distorted. Well, I'm not sure anybody can give an account that isn't somewhat distorted. Even Durga, who's at the center of it, probably couldn't tell you everything because she's been so crazy on all the drugs that Ma Propty's been giving her and everybody else, it turns out. I told you, or did I write it to somebody else, how funny people have been feeling after some of the meals, and how Ma Propty has been complaining about running out of tranquilizers, out of Percodan and Valium and Demerol over at the clinic? Well, the reason she kept running out is it's all been being sprinkled into our vegetarian curry, like they used to put saltpeter into prisoners' food to keep them from being too sexy. In our case, the idea seemed to be to keep us all calm and passive. Since Durga had this idea, everybody was conspiring to take her power from her. It's true there's been a lot of complaining about things running downhill, but her notion of a coup was quite fantastic and insecure, since the only real power source around here is the Arhat spiritual beauty and condition of moksha, liberation, which can't be stolen or changed. But the numbers of reporters and county officials and state cops and FBI men and men from the immigration service that kept filtering through made her feel she was losing control, I guess. It turns out that Durga, who, as I must have said before, is Irish, was terrified of having her green card taken away and being sent back there. And also Vic Shipta, who couldn't find a job in Seattle and is back here now, is from West Germany. And Ma Propty from Romania, by way of England. And the Arhat himself, of course, from India. Though, funnily enough, he's the only real Indian. The others stayed behind when they had to move the ashram out of this hilly, remote place full of carved caves called Elora. So this threat of deportation really hung over the inner circle in a way that those of us who happen to be American citizens and never thought much about it couldn't really appreciate. And so Durga was becoming more and more insecure, so that every official terrified her. Even the nice little old electrical man who came around to inspect the wiring and stage lighting in Joy 6-0. And when they'd offer these poor men who came around to ask some more official questions, herbal tea or whatever, they'd put in something. Heaven knows what. I don't know half the chemical names, and Ma Propty was willing to try anything as an experiment, even ground-up mesquite leaves and creosote bush twigs to make them confused and forgetful, but it mostly just gave them terrible diarrhea 2 hours later. She's confessed all this to the authorities. She talks to them day after day now. I don't think she felt around here anybody ever listened to her. So now, all these men, including the lawyers for the ranches and the land use clique from Phoenix, which is entirely retired Northerners with nothing else to do, and a lot of petty bureaucrats hoping to get their faces on television — this state is so square, Midge, the governor is called Babbitt — have been milling around and commandeering desks in the Uma room and putting their feet up and trying to be friendly, saying we don't seem to be such crazies as they had thought. Ooh, what was that? Nothing, I guess. Distant shots. I've made myself this cozy nest in Vic Shipta's old A-frame. He left his blankets, a lot of Lowenbrau in the fridge, and all this Freud in German that I can't read. Uh-oh. There it was again. It sounded closer than way up the canyon, but then that's how sounds are out here. Oh, no. No, that was definitely footsteps outside on the gravel. Now something's fiddling at the door. My God, Midge, what shall I do? Somebody's coming in. Master, it's you.
Who is with you?
Nobody. I'm alone. All alone. You scared me. My heart's pounding.
I heard your voice talking.
I often talk aloud before I go to sleep. It empties the mind. It's like saying a mantra.
To whom do you speak, Kundalini, in this spiritual exercise, since God in the Occidental sense does not exist?
My daughter, my old friends back home.
They are still with you?
No, Master. Only you are real. It's just I have to relax my cheetah vritis away from the disturbance lately.
Let me feel your heart pounding, my dear. When you speak in solitude, is it also to your husband?
Rather rarely, Master. For years, I didn't much interest him, and now he doesn't interest me.
Perhaps you both self-deceive a little in this. You said he admired your breasts. He was correct. They are admirable.
I usually wear a nightie, but it's been so hot lately.
Kundalini blushes. Also, she smiles. It is good to be admired. I admire your smooth darkness, your old-fashioned way.
I find your kindness to me rather stunning, actually. I mean, I'm 42 and just a former housewife.
Please, no fishing, Kundalini. You are magnificent. Your breasts are magnificent. Once, you did not let me caress them. You did not let me caress them like this.
Perhaps the context was different. You are my guest. One refuses a guest nothing. Master, why have you come to me?
I was alone. I was nervous. I thought of you. Perhaps also alone. We who remain in Prakriti are subject to nervousness in the forms of lust and fear. This is the great sacrifice the enlightened make out of karuna, out of compassion. Indeed, you are smooth as black gully.
I love it when you explain things. Would you like to touch me again?
That comes later, the touching. First is concentration, sadhana. We concentrate upon the beloved.
Shall I concentrate on you, too?
It is not necessary what the woman does, but yes. I am Nitya Manus, eternal man. I am Sahaja Manus, man unconditioned. I am Ayani Manus, man unborn. My linga is all lingas. My mouth is all mouths. My hands are all hands.
No, you are you. You have attributes. Let me see you. I'm getting sexually frustrated. How many more stages are there?
No need exists to rush. That is very Occidental, your need to rush. The next stage is dhyana, mystic meditation. Not for the sake of bodily pleasure, but for the enhancing of the spirit.
Must you go through this every time?
To make it holy, yes. To exalt us, yes. You may sit now, on my left, on the bed. The worship continues. Open your thighs.
That's nice, too. Nicer, even.
Can you feel my inner concentration?
So that's what I feel. End of tape, side 1. Midge. The master meditated upon my body, turned my body into spirit. He said that my tuna is not what is called in this country fucking. It's cosmic play. I really probably should have raised that side of the tape. But I have this feeling about it that it's bigger than I am somehow, that my personal modesty is totally unimportant, and it wasn't me in any case, but a kind of goddess, actually, and that what is really important is the Arhat's fantastic capacity for love. I don't know how he held it, but it stayed just as hard as a rock, only, of course, smooth. A jewel, just like they say. He was the jewel, and I was the lotus. It felt just like that, on and on, into eternity. And it wasn't just that once. I've been with him a few times since. It mustn't get back to Charles. I'll leave it up to you. I've been away so long now, I can't be the judge of anybody's spiritual progress and maturity. What other news? Alinga and I are spending a lot of time in the Uma room together lately, still trying to straighten out the mess Nitya left and to keep ahead of our mail. It seems everybody is suing us. We're like a whale that started to bleed and every shark in the ocean has gone into a feeding frenzy. Not only are all these governments, local, state, and national, on our case, but about 3 sets of parents are suddenly taking us to court for brainwashing their children. Though I don't see how they can collect damages, since these children are legally adult. And if they weren't here doing work as worship, they'd be hanging around their parents' homes, soaking up money and wrecking cars and running up psychiatrist bills. Speaking of Nitya Kalpana, you remember our former accountant? She says her head is out of the bad place it was in, and she can do with less meditation now. In fact, she wonders if she wasn't being overdosed in the clinic by Ma Propti, who, even though she spilled the beans for days to the FBI and everybody, is still under a lot of indictments. I've pretty well got the accounts so I can deal with them, and I don't want Nitya confusing things again. I feel invaded. No matter where you are or how much enlightenment is around, human relations are tricky. Midge, that is too bad, what you admitted or really more implied about you and Ed. You two always seem so solid. I used to envy you, in fact. You seemed so satisfied, so unquestioning. I mean, you weren't expecting the world, and you saw Ed's limitations, and I know his drinking aggravated you more than you let on, and that loudmouth, know-it-all manner that bothered me less than it did Charles, because if you listened, Ed really did know a lot of things, especially about electronic security systems and how car engines work, and how the insurance companies and pension funds control the stock market, but nevertheless, you never betrayed him by wincing or making sardonic eye contact like, say, Donna, and for that matter, Gloria used to do. And whatever your differences, your house was a fun one to be in. Those lovely lawn parties you two always gave. People are selfish, of course. And when a couple we know breaks up, it's one less port in a storm. 1 or 2 less parties a year, one more house in town that begins to look weedy and sad. When I left Charles, that was one of my thoughts. How sad it would be for the rest of you, not to have us to swell the scene, as it were. Heaven only knows what Charles is doing with his spare time now. Not that he ever had much. Those little nurses and receptionists he used to screw so happily when he had me as part of his baggage, I dare say, look and talk quite differently now that he's, so to speak, free. Real freedom is within, Midge. You and I know that. This morning in Darshan, the Arhat shared with us Buddha's last words. You know what they were? See if I can recite them without the accent. Be a lamp unto yourselves. Be a refuge unto yourselves. Seek no refuge outside of yourselves. That's what I'm trying to keep in mind in these hectic last couple of weeks. And you keep it in mind, no matter what the future brings for you and dear old Ed. Well, what else? What have I left out? My dreams, Midge. My dreams get more and more intense lately. It's frightening. And a lot of them are about, of all people, Charles. I've totally stopped thinking about him consciously. We've stopped communicating. Let Ducky and this vulture Gilman communicate. But in these dreams, we're making love the way we did the first years we were married. They say people in dreams are displacements, and it must be that it's really the Arhat I'm dreaming about, but it seems so vividly Charles. It's strange. But I wake up overwhelmed. He seems just enormous and flooding me with these spiritual waves. It must be a transposition of my experiences here. We're all just masks anyway, don't you think? I mean, masks of the archetypes. My best to Irving, and Ed, if he and you work things out, and Gloria, and Donna, and Liz, and Anne, and the others, but absolutely, I trust you, Midge. Don't let them listen. End of tape. November 14th. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Enright, we have been slow to respond to your several communications, not because we have been taking them lightly, but perhaps taking them all too seriously. Over the years, a considerable number of properly concerned and loving parents have written us, threatened us, and even appeared at our gates with complaints such as yours. We are often besieged by lawyers and psychiatric experts and prejudiced journalists over these issues of brainwashing and child abduction. Never mind that the child was as old as 34 in one case, and in almost all cases well above the legal age of consent. Our brains are there to be washed, Mr. and Mrs. Enright, by everything from elevator music to bumper stickers. And amid this polluted tide of bobbing, jostling, oozing propaganda, a few souls elect to discipline their egos and follow the master. Our way is not easy. Many fall away when they realize that the death of ego is the price of happiness. Many desert when they discover that cherished possessions must be sacrificed to non-attachment. Many have lately defected, rather than face the true richness of paradox which the Master has prepared for them. Openness and spontaneity are our watchwords, not control. Your son Kevin, or Yanya, as we call him here, came to us freely and is free to leave. Though appreciative of all you have done for him, from nursery school to business school, he does not want to return to your big sandstone house in St. Louis, with the mansard roof and the porte cochere and its archaic private street, though he thinks back upon it fondly, as we all should upon scenes we have outgrown. He is not brainwashed. He is adult and at peace, and on the road to nirvana. Look into your own hearts. Our Master advises you to consider this text from the Blessed Dhammapada. These are my sons. This is my wealth. In this way the fool troubles himself. He is not even the owner of himself. How much less of his sons and of his wealth? In demanding we return your son to you, you become fools. A semantic misunderstanding lies at the heart of your confusion. When we speak of our, or my, son or daughter, or wife or master, we are not expressing ownership, but by a grammatical shortcut, a certain intuitively felt connection. These persons, or manifestations of enduring modalities, have wandered into my sphere of apprehension, the possessive pronoun being used merely to locate the subjectivity. But people do not own people. Your son is not yours, even though you carried him in your womb and paid for his extensive education, frat fees, auto insurance, etc., though for a time he was yours to imprison within your Richardsonian mansion, and perhaps to bully and beat, and certainly to manipulate with the psychological blackmail at which the nuclear family is so adept. He is not yours now. To reflect creditably upon you in the eyes of your equally narrow-minded and proprietorial acquaintances, or to reverse the declining trend in the railroad enterprises that made your family fortune, or to extend your genes and generations further into the void of Maya. He is, instead, his. Or, to put it more exactly, his ego, or aham, is at the service of his highest self, the Atman, as it merges with Purusha, the changeless and featureless spirit which at the beginning of phenomena allowed itself to be clouded with the emergence of matter and its complicated turbulences. To make your son truly yours, come join him and us in this besieged place of pilgrimage and study, or, if you are too deeply mired in the illusory, too brainwashed, so to speak, come join us in the sense of making a generous gift to the work of the ashram, in the form either of a direct cash donation, in this last year of the full 50% tax bracket, or a gift of stocks, bonds, or property. Most sincerely, Ma Prem Kundalini, Executive Assistant to Sri Arhat Mindadali, M.A., Ph.D., Supreme Meditator, Ashram Arhat.